The Paria fuel pipeline tragedy. A struggle for survival. The Paria Fuel Trading Company is a state-owned oil enterprise located at the Pointe Pierre port in the Caribbean island nation of Trinidad and Tobago. Years ago, the company acquired a facility that included a pipeline that had been inactive for approximately 4 years. To repair and reactivate this line, a contract was made with 5 professional divers from a company called LMCS. However, there was something in the pipeline that the divers did not know, and things would never go according to plan. This is the story of a routine underwater oil pipeline repair that turned into an unimaginable nightmare, and a team of divers struggle for survival. As we head into this dark oil pipe where moments of terror were experienced at the bottom of the ocean, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. The mission and the setup. When oil is extracted from the seabed, it cannot be used immediately for most purposes. First, it must be refined and processed into more common forms, such as gasoline and diesel. If the drilling platform is far offshore, transportation is usually handled by large tankers and then brought ashore via underwater pipelines. The pipeline to be maintained by Paria was 76 centimeters wide and 365 meters long, shaped like a long U. One end of the line rose closer to the shore, while the other end emerged from the open sea. The logic was simple. Once operational, ships would discharge oil at berth 6, and the oil would travel through the long horizontal section to exit at berth 5, where it would be sent ashore for processing. 2 weeks before maintenance began on the dormant line, both ends were sealed with special inflatable plugs to prevent oil leaks and water ingress, making the interior airtight. Later, to allow the divers to work comfortably, a large metal habitat, air chamber, was placed over the offshore riser. By pumping air into this chamber to push the water out, the water level inside was lowered below sea level, providing a dry and safe workspace. The incident. Delta P. On February 25, 2022, the divers, Faisal, Kazim, Yusuf, Rishi, and Christopher, put on their gear and entered the water. They were experienced professionals. That day, 4 were assigned to the task, while the 5th man, Christopher Boodram, was designated as the standby rescue diver. Once inside the habitat, they removed their diving suits and began unscrewing the large metal bolts to remove the airtight plug. However, they encountered a stuck valve and needed a wrench. One diver swam out to the boat, retrieved the tool, and handed it to his teammate. The moment the valve was opened, the pressurized plug deflated instantly. This created a massive pressure differential, delta P. The air inside created a powerful vacuum effect, sucking all 5 divers and their equipment into the pipe, along with seawater in less than a second. The force was so immense they were swept into a vortex, losing all sense of direction. Normally, the pipeline should have been full of oil, which would have prevented such a vacuum. Instead, it was filled with air. The 5 men were dragged dozens of meters into the pitch-black pipe for 90 seconds, surrounded by seawater and oil residue. The struggle inside. Because the pipeline lay on uneven ground, there were occasional air pockets. Miraculously, they stopped at one of these elevations deep within the pipe. They were trapped in a narrow space, covered in oil and water, barely able to move. Although they were in an air pocket, the water level was near their faces, leaving very little room to breathe. As they regained consciousness, they realized the horror of their situation. They called out to each other. All were alive, but most had broken bones and severe injuries. Their eyes stung, their throats burned, and their bodies were in excruciating pain. Audio recordings from inside the pipe capture these chilling moments. Realizing they had to move, they decided to crawl back toward the entrance. They formed a chain, each placing their feet under the armpits of the person behind them. Along the way, they miraculously found 2 oxygen tanks that had been sucked in with them. They shared the air, taking small sips to sustain themselves. After an hour of crawling, the water level rose again. It was impossible for 5 men to continue with only 2 tanks, especially with broken limbs. Christopher Boodram, being at the front, had to leave his friends to find help. Despite their pleas for him not to go, he promised to bring a rescue team and pushed forward into the flooded section. The failed rescue. Christopher swam through the dark, not knowing if he was going the right way. He found another tank along the way, took a few breaths, and eventually reached the vertical section of the pipe. Exhausted and unable to pull himself up, he grabbed a dangling chain and shouted for help. 20 minutes later, rescue divers pulled him out. It was around 5:30 p.m. Christopher immediately informed officials that his 4 friends were alive, but injured and trapped. He described their location. However, the company did not believe his story. Assuming they would drown within an hour or were already dead, they initiated no immediate rescue. Faisal's son eventually entered the pipe unauthorized and swam a short distance, but found no one. Later, when commercial dive teams arrived, Paria refused to permit a rescue mission, citing the risk of another pressure change. They effectively blocked any attempt to save the men, even as tapping sounds were heard from inside the pipe at 3 a.m. on Saturday, proving the divers were still alive and signaling for help. The aftermath, no one came. All 4 men, Kazim Ali Jr., Yusuf Henry, Faisal Kurban, and Rishi Nagasar, suffocated or drowned in that 365-meter tomb. Their bodies were recovered days later, between February 28th and March 3rd. An autopsy and a GoPro recovered from Kazim Ali Jr. confirmed the horror. The men were alive long after the accident, praying and comforting each other in the darkness. A commission of inquiry later found Paria guilty of gross negligence. The report stated that the company failed its duty of care and that the men could have been saved if a proper rescue had been permitted. Despite these findings, the company continues its operations today, largely avoiding consequences. What do you think could have been done to save these 4 men from that pipeline? Please share your thoughts in the comments.